I used Lilith Loop to go undefeated last week in a big playmat tournament for the Digimon TCG. I think this deck is really cool and been growing in popularity ever since the announcement of Mega Digimon Fusion getting banned, so let's talk about my current deck list. Starting off, of course, we have our Digi-Eggs. We are playing 4 copies of the brand new BT6 Sunomon as sort of the main advantage piece within our discard engine for purple. This card basically allows you to net 0 at the very least whenever you discard cards from your hand and thus cycle through your deck, but at the very most you can go +1 or even +2 depending on how many Sunomons you have in play. Because Lilith Loop is all about drawing through your deck and getting all the pieces you need for your big combo, there's really no need to play any other eggs. Moving on to the big boss monsters of the deck, we have our main powerhouse in Omnimon Zwart. This is the card we're trying to utilize as many times as possible during our turn to either build our board or get multiple attacks against our opponent. Because you can recycle them with cards like Mega Digimon Fusion, there's really no need to play more than 3. Up next, we have our level 6s, and of course, this is a Lilith Loop deck, so we're playing 4 copies of the main queen herself, along with 1 copy of Mastemon. So Lilithmon, as you guys know, is the option card queen. She's able to not only give you more resources whenever you use option cards, but you can even loop those option cards from your trash back to your hand and use their effects over and over again. This is the main mechanic we utilize in this deck to create powerful combos. On top of that, though, we do have the inclusion of Mastemon, which I'm seeing not a lot of people choose to play, and I don't know why, because it really adds to your aggressive output in this deck. I really like the inclusion of Mastemon. I think it rounds off the deck and gives you a lot more plays that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. Another card that could do this is Titamon. Up next, we have our level 5s, one of my favorite parts about this deck because I am using some new cards here. First things first, we have 3 copies of Lady Devamon, then we have 3 copies of Rebellamon, 1 copy of Skullgreymon, and 1 copy of the brand new Lady Devamon from EX1. This deck is built on a discard engine, which means having cards like Rebellamon and Lady Devamon are super important, not only to dig through our deck, but also add extra cards to our hand, and Rebellamon has the extra benefit of being a blocker retaliator against pesky decks like Jesmon, or if we're being rushed down super early and want to add to our defense, Rebellamon's a nice option. This deck is all about playing it slow and setting up to your big Lilithmon loop combo whenever possible, and Rebellamon helps us survive when we need it. Besides that, we have the 2 really cool tech options in Skullgreymon and Lady Devamon. Skullgreymon being able not only to be a cool card to discard, but also a really cool enabler for clutch plays like adding retaliation to a weenie rookie, or protecting our Lilithmon from being swung into if she's rested on our opponent's turn. And then the Lady Devamon is really cool because not only does her Wind Digivolve effect allow us to add cards to our trash, thus making our potential Lilithmon turn even stronger, but she also has a really cool inheritable that lets us gain a memory whenever we play cards from our trash. This is my ideal level 5 to call off of Omnimon Zwart effect, so that way if I were to evolve it into another Mega, I can then get extra memory on top of the next Zwart I play, or even a Mastemon that I play, which is super cool. Moving on to probably the most powerful / my favorite part of this deck, we have the level 4s. Starting off, of course, we have 3 copies of Ginkakumon Promote, 3 copies of Ginkakumon, 3 copies of Kinkakumon, and finally 2 copies of Vilemon to just round off our total level 4 count. I feel like this goes without saying, but the inclusion of the Ginkakumon package for purple is a game changer, especially in this aggressive / early game damage focused format we have right now in EX1. I mean, being able to on turn 2 turn the Kinkakumon you evolved into turn 1 into a 6000 DP swinger that can get rid of any level 3 on attack is really powerful for just keeping up tempo and damage in the early turns. Not to mention is the inclusion of a rush card that you can recycle with cards like Omnimon Zwart, a really nice inclusion to add to our power ceiling for damage in the late game for this deck. This engine is an absolute game changer for purple. I think it's super strong, and if your deck is currently not using it, what are you doing? Also, if I had it my way, I wouldn't be playing Vilemon at all in this deck. I'd just be playing more copies of the Ginkakumon engine. But because this format, like I said earlier, is really aggressive, especially against decks like Agubond or D-Brigade, having blockers for the early turns is super important. Up next, we have the level 3s, and this one's pretty boring. We have 4 copies of Gabumon from the starter deck, 4 copies of Labramon, 3 copies of Gazimon, and 2 copies of Demi Devamon, the 2-drop vanilla. Obviously, Gabumon is going to be a part of the discard engine once once again, being able to get a free filter on swing is super useful for our level 4s and level 5s. Then we have Lilithmon, who for the same purpose allows us to just cycle through our deck and get potential pluses off of Tsunomon and Genkakumon whenever we need to, thus making her a cheaper card to play from our hand, which is pretty interesting. Then we have the hottest tech right now in Gazimon. I mean, memory blockers are so good against things like Bond of Friendship, Lilithmon Loop, and even Jessmon to a certain extent. And then finally rounding off, we have of course 2-drop vanillas in Demidevimon, super useful not only for choking your opponent and building your board at the exact same time, not to mention there's a really cute play you can do where you hard play this for 2 and then evolve on top of it into Genkakumon Promote for 2 more, and all of a sudden you have a 4-cost Bushiagumon in purple. Up next, we have the main reason why this deck is kind of ridiculous. The option cards that we're currently using are 3 copies of Jack Raid, 1 copy of Underworld's Call, 2 copies of Mega Digimon Fusion, the first and only banned card in Digimon right now, and then 1 copy of Emergency Program Shutdown. First things first, Jack Raid, this is Purple Hammer Spark. Of course we're playing it. Not only can we gain memory abundantly in this deck, but we can recycle this with Lilithmon. It feels like once you have 3 memory and a Lilithmon, it feels like you have infinite memory. Thanks to cards like this. And then we also have on top of that 1 copy of Underworld's Call. The one really cool thing about Underworld's Call is that it basically allows us to use Promote without the need for Mastemon or Omnimon Zwart to be online. Up next, we have the arguably broken / busted part of this deck in Mega Digimon Fusion. This is the card that enables us to not only go into Zwart for free, but sometimes go into Zwart while gaining 2 memory thanks to Lilithmon. I mean, we all know the main combo at this point, right? You start off with Lilithmon, you play Mega Digimon Fusion, you go into Omnimon Zwart for free at the very least, you mill 3, you play level 5 and something else. After that, you attack with Omnimon Zwart, bring back the Lilithmon using his effect, and then after his attack is resolved, you evolve the new level 5 into a new Lilith, and you do it all over again if you have access to another Zwart. And if that wasn't bad enough, gaining all those resources for basically free, you get to put the Zwart on the bottom of your deck at the end of the turn, thus preventing you from decking out on the following turn if you went through all the cards in your deck. I have used the effect of Mega Digimon Fusion to keep myself from decking out in multiple games, and it always feels unfair. But that's cool. So yeah, that's why Mega Digimon Fusion is broken in this deck, and would you believe me if I told you that this was not the reason Mega Digimon Fusion is getting banned, but some other broken thing happening in like a future format was the reason it happened? Crazy, right? But rounding off our total option card pool, we have 1 copy of Emergency Program Shutdown. This is the new card introduced from EX1. It allows us to shut down our opponent's option cards during their turn, and we can use it for pretty cheap actually in this deck, sometimes even choking our opponent at 1. My current favorite use of this card is actually against Mirror Match, being able to shut off opposing Jack Raids and Mega Digimon Fusions. And finally, rounding off our entire deck, we have 2 copies of Analog Youth and 1 copy of Manoa Bellucci. These are the white tamers that we're playing to enable us to use cards like Mega Digimon Fusion and Program Shutdown. Right now, I'm really liking Analog Youth, but I'm also really hating Analog Youth because while the mill effect is super useful for adding to our power ceiling with our Lilith Loop combos, milling Digimon Fusion does not feel too great. So I definitely tread lightly every time I play Analog Youth if I don't already have Mega Digimon Fusion in my hand. And then Manoa Bellucci has felt like an absolute rock star in the deck. Being able to set myself to 3 every single turn is ridiculous because you can go a long way with 3 memory in this deck, especially once you get Lilithmon in play. Oh my gosh. 1 card I am considering that I'm always going to consider when it comes to playing this deck is Takumi Aiba. That card feels really good right now, and I do want to try to find room for it, not only for the extra draws when I Digivolve, but also for the ability to deter rookie-based aggression against my opponents. And yeah, that's it for my current Lilithmon Loop deck for the Digimon TCG EX1 format. Here's a final snapshot for you guys so you guys can get a good last look at it. I highly recommend you play this deck, especially if you want to get good with it, because I feel like getting good with this deck is very rewarding in other aspects of the game. And while yes, this deck will take a big hit come February 25th and the official ban of Mega Digimon Fusion happens, I really like how strong it is right now, and if you want to play it, you should. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this new format of deck profile I was trying out. If you did, be sure to let me know by smashing that like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that bell for notifications so you know when my videos go live for you. And with all that being said, I've been your true champion, Steven. Please be sure to work hard, rest easy, and live well. And I will see you all next time. Peace.